Tonight's confession begins. Only on Velvet Confessions. My husband used to say I was lucky to have him. At first, I thought it was a joke. But over time, I realized he truly believed it. He believed I was replaceable. And the worst part? For 5 years, I believed it too. I'm Emily. I'm 29 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a stable marriage. Not happy. Not passionate. Just stable. The kind of marriage where your husband barely looks at you during dinner, but still asks where his blue tie is every morning. The kind where silence slowly replaces love. Jason and I met when I was 22. Back then, he was charming. Confident. Ambitious. Everyone loved him. And honestly, I did too. He made me feel safe. Important. Chosen. But after we got married, something changed. Slowly. Almost invisibly. Like watching paint fade from a wall. At first, it was small comments. You'd look prettier if you tried harder. You're too emotional. You should be grateful I worked this hard for us. Then the comments became jokes. Then the jokes became insults. And eventually, the insults became normal. By year 4 of our marriage, Jason barely touched me anymore. He spent more time on his phone than speaking to me. Every conversation felt like an inconvenience to him. Meanwhile, I worked full-time, cleaned the apartment, paid half the bills, cooked dinner, and still somehow felt like a failure. One night, I spent 3 hours making his favorite meal. Steak. Garlic potatoes. Wine. I even wore the red dress he once said he loved. Jason came home late. Didn't say hello. Didn't kiss me. He looked at the table for 2 seconds before loosening his tie. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. What is all this? I smiled nervously. I just thought we could spend some time together. Emily, he interrupted, already scrolling through his phone, I'm tired. The room went quiet. I stood there like an idiot holding 2 plates while he walked past me toward the bedroom. But then he stopped. Turned around. And said the sentence that destroyed something inside me forever. You know, he sighed, you're replaceable, right? I froze. He shrugged casually, like he was commenting on the weather. I mean, let's be honest. There are a million women who can cook and clean. You act like you're special or something. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. He didn't even look guilty. That was the scary part. He genuinely believed it. Then he disappeared into the bedroom while I stood alone in the kitchen staring at the candles I lit for him. I wish I could say I left him that night. I didn't. Instead, I cleaned the table. Put the leftovers away. And cried silently in the bathroom so he wouldn't hear me. Because when someone slowly destroys your confidence over years, you stop recognizing your own pain. But everything changed 3 weeks later. Because that's when I accidentally saw the text message. And that single message would destroy our entire marriage. To be continued. Welcome back to Velvet Confessions, where secrets always come to light. The text message appeared while Jason was in the shower. I wasn't trying to snoop. Honestly. His phone lit up beside me on the couch while I was folding laundry. At first, I ignored it. But then I saw the preview. Last night was amazing. Wish she knew. Wink. My stomach dropped. For a second, I genuinely stopped breathing. I stared at the screen, hoping, praying, I misunderstood something. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was from a coworker. Maybe. Then another message appeared. Are you coming over again Friday? My hands started shaking. The contact name was saved as Claire W. No heart emoji. No nickname. Just Claire. Like he wanted it hidden in plain sight. The bathroom shower was still running. Jason was humming. Humming. Like my entire world wasn't collapsing 10 feet away from him. I know some people would have thrown the phone immediately. Or confronted him right there. But I couldn't move. I just sat frozen on the couch staring at those messages while my heartbeat pounded so hard it hurt. Then curiosity took over. Or maybe survival instinct. I unlocked the phone. Jason never changed his password because he genuinely believed I'd never question him. And honestly, he was right. Until now. The messages went back months. Months. Pictures. Flirting. Hotel reservations. Inside jokes. There was even a screenshot of my Instagram. Claire had replied. She looks exhausting. And Jason answered. You have no idea. I felt physically sick. 5 years together. And this man was mocking me to another woman like I was some annoying roommate. Then I saw the message that hurt the most. Claire. Why don't you just leave her? Jason. Because she's useful. Useful. Not loved. Not respected. Useful. I covered my mouth to stop myself from making noise. The shower turned off. Panic shot through me. I locked the phone and placed it exactly where it was just as Jason walked out wearing a towel around his waist. He glanced at me briefly. You okay? I nodded too quickly. Yeah, just tired. He barely reacted. Just grabbed his phone and walked into the bedroom. Meanwhile, I sat there feeling like I was watching my life from outside my body. That night, Jason fell asleep almost instantly. I didn't sleep at all. I just stared at the ceiling replaying every moment from the last 2 years. Every late night at work. Every canceled date. Every cold response. Every insult. Suddenly everything made sense. Around 3 a.m., I quietly got out of bed and walked to the kitchen. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped the glass of water I poured. That's when my phone buzzed. It was from my best friend, Sarah. Girl, are you awake? I almost ignored it. But something inside me broke. So I called her. The second she heard my voice, she went silent. Then softly asked. Emily, what happened? And for the first time in years, I finally told someone the truth. Not the polished version. Not the "we're just stressed" lie I told everyone. The real truth. That my husband made me feel small. Invisible. Replaceable. By the end of the call, Sarah sounded furious. Emily, she said carefully, you need to leave him. I laughed weakly. You make it sound easy. No, she replied quietly. He made you believe it's impossible. That sentence stayed in my head the entire night. Because deep down, I think I already knew my marriage was over. I just didn't know how far Jason was willing to go to protect his secret. And I definitely wasn't prepared for what I'd discover next. To be continued. Tonight's story continues on Velvet Confessions. The next morning, Jason acted completely normal. That was the terrifying part. He kissed my forehead before work. Asked if we needed groceries. Even reminded me to pay the internet bill. Meanwhile, I could barely look at him without hearing that word echo in my head. Useful. I watched him tie his tie in the hallway mirror like he hadn't shattered me the night before. Then right before leaving, he smiled casually. Don't wait up tonight. Work dinner. Lie. I already knew it was a lie. The second the front door closed, I broke down. Not dramatic movie crying. The ugly kind. The kind where your chest hurts so badly you can't breathe properly. But eventually, the tears stopped. And something colder replaced them. I needed answers. Real answers. Because if Jason was cheating, I wanted proof before confronting him. So for the first time in my life, I did something I never thought I would do. I followed my husband. Friday night. 7:12 p.m. Jason left the apartment wearing the gray coat I bought him last Christmas. The one he claimed he never wore. I stayed 3 cars behind him the entire drive while my hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my fingers hurt. He didn't go to a restaurant. He didn't go downtown. He pulled into the parking lot of a luxury apartment complex across the city. And my stomach sank immediately. This wasn't casual. This wasn't random. This looked familiar. Routine. I watched him confidently enter the building without even checking his phone for directions. My chest tightened. He'd been here before. Many times. For almost 20 minutes, I sat frozen in my car staring at the building entrance. Part of me wanted to leave. Part of me still hoped I was somehow wrong. Then I saw her. Tall blonde hair. White sweater. Laughing while walking toward the elevator. Claire. Even from a distance, I recognized her from the photos. She looked younger than me. Perfect skin. Perfect body. Perfect smile. The kind of woman social media worships. And suddenly every cruel thing Jason ever said to me came rushing back at once. You've let yourself go. You're too sensitive. Why can't you be more fun? I felt sick. Because for years, I blamed myself. I genuinely thought if I became prettier, calmer, thinner, quieter, maybe he'd love me again. But sitting there watching another woman walk into his secret apartment, I finally understood something. Jason was never empty because of me. He was empty because of himself. Still, that realization didn't stop the pain. Around 9:30 p.m., Jason finally came back outside. And I swear, I'll never forget the expression on his face. Relaxed. Happy. Peaceful. He looked happier leaving another woman's apartment than he ever looked coming home to me. That's when something inside me truly died. I drove home in silence. No music. No crying. Nothing. When Jason returned after midnight, he found me sitting alone in the dark living room. For a second, he looked startled. Then annoyed. Why are you sitting in the dark? I stared at him quietly. Did you have a nice dinner? He loosened his tie. Yeah. Why? I held eye contact for 3 long seconds. And for the first time in years, Jason looked nervous. Just slightly. Just enough for me to notice. But then his expression hardened again. You're acting weird lately. Weird. I almost laughed. Instead, I stood up slowly, walked past him, and said softly, I think I finally realized something about us. He frowned. What? I turned toward him. And for the very first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. You were right, I whispered. I am replaceable. Jason blinked in confusion. Then I smiled coldly. So are you. And for the first time in our marriage, he had absolutely no idea what I was planning next. To be continued. Welcome back to Velvet Confessions. After I told Jason he was replaceable too, the entire atmosphere in the apartment changed. It was subtle at first. but I noticed it immediately. For years, Jason had complete control over our relationship. He insulted me, ignored me, lied to me, and he always assumed I'd stay. But now, something was different. He could feel it. The next few days, he kept watching me carefully, like he was trying to figure out what I knew. Meanwhile, I acted completely normal. I cooked dinner, went to work, folded laundry, smiled when necessary. But emotionally, I was already gone. And honestly, that terrified him more than screaming ever could. One night, I came home from work and found Jason cleaning the kitchen. Jason never cleaned. Ever. I almost laughed. "You okay?" he asked casually. Why wouldn't I be? He leaned against the counter. I don't know. You've just been distant. Distant. Funny how men notice distance only after they lose control. I shrugged. Maybe I'm tired. For a second, he studied my face carefully. Then came the manipulation. Classic Jason. "You know I've been stressed lately, right?" There it was. The setup. The excuse before the confession. I stayed quiet. He sighed dramatically. "Work has been a nightmare. I feel like we barely connect anymore." I almost admired the audacity. This man was sleeping with another woman while trying to blame emotional distance on me. Then he stepped closer. "You know I love you, right?" The words felt disgusting. Because suddenly I realized something important. Jason didn't love me. He loved access to me. Access to comfort. Cooking. Cleaning. Bills split in half. Emotional support. Stability. I wasn't his wife. I was his safety net. And the moment I emotionally disconnected, he panicked. That night after he fell asleep, I opened my laptop. And for the first time in years, I checked our finances carefully. At first, everything looked normal. Joint account. Rent payments. Utilities. Then I noticed something strange. Large withdrawals. Consistent ones. Every month. Almost $2,000. My heartbeat slowed. I opened the statements. Luxury restaurants. Jewelry stores. Weekend hotel bookings. My chest tightened harder with every click. This wasn't just cheating. Jason was funding his affair using our shared money. Money I worked for too. Then I found the transaction that truly shocked me. Monthly payments. For an apartment lease. The same building I followed him to. I stared at the screen in disbelief. He hadn't just been cheating. He'd built an entire second life behind my back. And I was helping pay for it. At 1:17 a.m., I quietly walked into the bedroom. Jason was asleep beside me. Peaceful. Comfortable. Completely unaware that his entire world was seconds away from collapsing. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I whispered softly. "You should have treated me better." The next morning, I called a lawyer. And what she told me next changed everything. To be continued. Tonight's confession continues on Velvet Confessions. The lawyer's office smelled like coffee and old paper. I remember that detail because I was trying desperately not to fall apart. Her name was Diane Carter. Divorce attorney. Sharp eyes. Calm voice. The kind of woman who looked impossible to manipulate. Which immediately made me trust her. She listened quietly while I explained everything. The cheating. The apartment. The money. The insults. The constant emotional abuse. At one point, she stopped taking notes and looked directly at me. "Emily," she said carefully, "has your husband always controlled the finances this much?" I hesitated. Not exactly. But even as I said it, I realized how wrong I was. Jason controlled almost everything. He chose where we lived, how we spent money, what vacations we took. Even stupid things, like where we ate dinner. And somehow, over the years, I stopped noticing. Diane leaned back slightly. "You'd be surprised how often emotional manipulation and financial control happen together." The word manipulation hit me harder than I expected. Because deep down, I still kept trying to make excuses for him. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe. No. That thinking was exactly why I stayed so long. Diane slid a folder toward me. "If the apartment lease and transactions were paid using marital funds, that changes things significantly." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means your husband may have accidentally financed your divorce." For the first time in weeks. I smiled. A real smile. Small. But real. Then she asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Do you want revenge, or freedom?" The room went silent. Because honestly, I wanted both. I wanted Jason to feel even a fraction of the humiliation he gave me for years. But more than that, I wanted peace. I was tired of shrinking myself to protect a man who never protected me. Diane nodded slowly like she already understood. "Then be smart," she said. "Not emotional." That became my strategy. For the next 2 weeks, I pretended everything was normal. And Jason slowly relaxed again. Big mistake. Because the more comfortable he became, the sloppier he got. He stopped hiding his phone. Started staying out later. Even became nicer to me occasionally. Which somehow hurt worse. One Friday night, he came home carrying flowers. Flowers. After months of coldness. After cheating on me for who knows how long. He handed them to me awkwardly. "What's this for?" He shrugged. "Do I need a reason?" "Yes. Because guilty people suddenly become generous when they sense consequences." I placed the flowers on the counter without reacting. And for a split second, I saw panic flash across his face. Jason wasn't scared of losing me. He was scared of losing control over me. Later that night, while he slept, I transferred copies of every financial document, message, and transaction onto a private drive Diane told me to create. Proof. Evidence. Protection. And then, I found something unexpected. An email confirmation. Subject line: "Congratulations on your engagement." My entire body went cold. Engagement? I opened it immediately. It was addressed to Claire. Attached was a receipt for a custom diamond ring. Purchased 3 weeks ago. My hand started shaking violently. Because Jason wasn't just cheating. He was planning a future with her. While still married to me. While sleeping beside me every night. And suddenly, all the sadness disappeared. Only anger remained. Cold. Focused. Dangerous anger. I slowly turned toward the bedroom where Jason slept peacefully. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I stopped seeing him as my husband. I started seeing him as my enemy. To be continued. Welcome back to Velvet Confessions. The morning after I found the engagement email, I made breakfast for my husband. Pancakes. Eggs. Coffee exactly the way he liked it. And while Jason sat across from me eating comfortably, I imagined flipping the entire table onto him. But instead, I smiled. Because anger is dangerous. But controlled anger? That's power. Jason glanced at me between bites. You seem happier lately. I almost choked on my coffee. Happier. Meanwhile, I was secretly collecting evidence to destroy his entire double life. I've just been thinking a lot, I replied calmly. He nodded slowly. Like he was trying to read me. But for the first time in years, he couldn't. And it bothered him. Good. That weekend, Jason claimed he had another work conference. I already knew where he was going. Claire's apartment. So the second he left, I began phase 2 of my plan. I went through his office. Not dramatically. Carefully. Methodically. And honestly, it was almost insulting how easy it was. Jason truly believed I was too weak to ever question him. Inside one drawer, I found expensive watch receipts, hotel bookings, printed restaurant reservations, even a handwritten note from Claire. Can't wait until this fake marriage is over. Fake marriage. 5 years of my life reduced to a temporary inconvenience. My hands trembled slightly. But then I found something even worse. A folder labeled Private. Inside were documents for a new bank account. One I'd never seen before. Balance. $48,233. I stared at the number in disbelief. Jason had been secretly moving money for months. Maybe years. Preparing to leave me financially stranded. And suddenly, Diane's words echoed in my head. Be smart. Not emotional. So instead of confronting him, I photographed everything. Every statement. Every receipt. Every hidden account detail. Then I quietly placed everything back exactly where it was. By the time Jason came home Sunday night, I was sitting on the couch watching television. Normal. Calm. Predictable. He looked relieved immediately. Miss me, he joked. I smiled politely. A little. The lie came naturally now. That night, Jason fell asleep almost instantly beside me. Meanwhile, I stayed awake staring at the ceiling. Not crying. Not heartbroken. Planning. Because the more evidence I uncovered, the more I realized something horrifying. Jason never expected me to survive without him. He genuinely believed I'd fall apart. That I'd beg him to stay. That I'd compete for his attention while he slowly replaced me. And honestly, maybe the old Emily would've. But that version of me was dying. Slowly. Painfully. And in her place, something colder was emerging. The next afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. We need to talk about Jason. My stomach tightened instantly. I stared at the screen for several seconds before replying. Who is this? 3 dots appeared. Then, Claire. My heartbeat stopped. And what she sent me next changed everything. To be continued. Tonight's confession continues, on Velvet Confessions. I stared at Claire's message for almost a full minute before responding. Part of me thought it was a trap. Another part of me wanted to throw my phone across the room. But curiosity won. It always does. What do you want? I typed carefully. Her reply came almost instantly. I didn't know about you at first. I laughed bitterly. Of course. Every affair starts with that sentence. Still. I kept reading. Jason told me your marriage was basically over. Classic. Cowards always rewrite history to make themselves look innocent. Then another message appeared. Can we meet? I should have said no. I know that now. But something inside me needed to see her. Needed answers. So 2 hours later, I found myself sitting across from the woman sleeping with my husband. Claire looked nervous. Nothing like the confident woman I saw outside that apartment building. She kept twisting the sleeve of her sweater while avoiding eye contact. And honestly, that surprised me. I expected arrogance. Not guilt. Finally, she looked up. I'm sorry. The words caught me off guard. Not because they fixed anything. They didn't. But because it was the first genuine apology I'd heard in years. I stayed quiet. So she continued. He told me you were emotionally abusive. I almost laughed. Jason really had created an entirely different version of me. Claire swallowed hard. He said you refused to divorce him because you needed his money. That one actually made me angry. Because I paid half our bills. Sometimes more. Meanwhile, Jason secretly funded an affair apartment behind my back. Claire slid her phone across the table. Look. My stomach dropped. Messages. Hundreds of them. But these were different from the ones I'd seen. Much worse. Jason mocked me constantly. The way I dressed. The way I laughed. Even personal things I told him privately. One message made my chest physically hurt. Claire. Do you still sleep with her? Jason. Only when it's easier than arguing. I stopped breathing for a second. 5 years together. And that's what intimacy became to him. Convenience. Claire looked horrified watching my reaction. I didn't know he was like this, she whispered. But honestly? I think she did. Maybe not at first. But eventually, she knew. Women always know. Then she said something unexpected. He's lying to both of us. I frowned. What do you mean? Claire opened another screenshot. This one was recent. Very recent. It was Jason talking to another woman. Not me. Not Claire. Someone else. My entire body went cold. 3 women. At least. Maybe more. Claire looked sick. He told her I was his ex. For a second, neither of us spoke. The situation had become almost absurd. Jason wasn't building a future. He was collecting lives. Attention. Control. Validation. And suddenly, I realized something terrifying. Claire wasn't special either. She was just next. Eventually, he would have replaced her too. The same way he replaced me. Claire slowly looked up. What are you going to do? That question lingered between us heavily. Because until now, my plan was divorce. Quiet. Clean. But after seeing those messages, after realizing how deeply Jason manipulated everyone around him, something changed. I leaned back slowly. Then for the first time, I smiled. Not sadly. Not emotionally. Coldly. And Claire immediately noticed. Because her expression shifted slightly. Almost nervous. I think, I said softly. My husband is about to have a very bad month. To be continued. Welcome back to Velvet Confessions. After meeting Claire, I stopped seeing this as a broken marriage. This was a game now. And Jason had no idea he was losing. For the next week, Claire and I secretly worked together. Honestly, if someone told me a month earlier that I'd be planning my husband's downfall with his mistress, I would have laughed in their face. But life gets strange when betrayal becomes routine. Claire forwarded me everything. Messages, photos, bank transfers, even voice recordings. And the more evidence we uncovered, the uglier Jason became. There wasn't just one affair. Or two. There were at least 4 women. Different lies for each one. To one woman, he was emotionally trapped. To another, he claimed I refused to sign divorce papers. One woman genuinely believed he lived alone. I sat at my kitchen table reading through years of manipulation while Jason slept peacefully in the next room. And honestly, that calmness scared me most. How does someone lie this much without guilt? Then I found the message that changed everything. It was sent to one of the women 3 months earlier. Jason wrote, "Once the divorce is finalized, half her savings become mine anyway." I reread the sentence 3 times. Then my blood ran cold. This entire time, Jason wasn't just cheating. He was planning financially around my destruction. The apartment, the hidden account, the manipulation, the emotional abuse. It all suddenly connected perfectly. He wanted me broken before he left. Weak women ask fewer legal questions. I immediately sent the screenshot to Diane. Her response came 5 minutes later. "Do not confront him yet." Then, this message could help us tremendously. For the first time since this nightmare began, I finally felt powerful. Not emotional. Not reactive. Prepared. That Friday, Jason invited me to dinner unexpectedly. A fancy rooftop restaurant downtown. The kind he hadn't taken me to in years. I almost said no. But Diane told me something important earlier that day. When manipulative people feel control slipping, they perform. And she was right. Jason was performing. At dinner, he smiled more than usual. Complimented my dress. Even reached for my hand twice. Honestly, it felt creepy. Like watching a stranger pretend to be my husband. Halfway through dinner, he leaned back casually. "You know, I've been thinking maybe we should take a vacation together." Vacation. Interesting timing. Especially for a man secretly planning an engagement with another woman. I smiled politely. "That sounds nice." Relief flashed across his face. He thought he was winning me back. Meanwhile, I was mentally calculating how much alimony he might owe me. Then came the moment that truly disgusted me. Jason looked directly at me and said, "You know I'd never hurt you, right?" I nearly laughed out loud. Because what terrified me most wasn't his cheating anymore. It was how convincingly he lied. Without hesitation. Without shame. Without emotion. As if destroying people was completely normal to him. That night, when we got home, Jason wrapped his arms around me in the kitchen. Something he hadn't done in months. "I miss us," he whispered softly. And for one dangerous second, my heart almost broke again. Because part of me still remembered the man I thought he used to be. But then my phone buzzed. A message from Claire. Just one sentence. "He's texting another woman right now." I slowly looked down. And there it was. Jason's phone glowing in his pocket. Buzzing against his leg while he held me. Still lying. Still cheating. Still pretending. I looked up at him slowly. And suddenly, I wasn't sad anymore. I was done. To be continued.
Tonight's confession continues. On Velvet Confessions. After that night, everything became easier. Not emotionally. But mentally. Because once you stop loving someone, you stop fearing them too. Jason still played the role of the caring husband. Morning kisses. Random compliments. Fake concern. But now I could see every move clearly. It was all strategy. Damage control. He sensed something slipping and desperately wanted control back. Unfortunately for him, it was too late. 3 days later, Diane called me. And her voice sounded different. Excited. "Emily," she said carefully, "I need you to come in immediately." My stomach tightened. For one terrifying moment, I thought something went wrong. But the second I entered her office, she smiled. A real smile. Then she slid a document across the desk. I stared at it in confusion. "What is this?" "Your husband made a mistake." Those 4 words changed everything. Apparently, Jason had been transferring money through multiple accounts trying to hide assets before filing for divorce. Illegal. Very illegal. Especially because some of the money came directly from our joint savings account. Diane tapped the papers calmly. "If this goes to court, the judge is not going to like him." For the first time in months, I finally exhaled. Not from relief. From certainty. Jason wasn't untouchable anymore. Then Diane asked me something unexpected. "Do you want him exposed publicly?" I hesitated. Because honestly, part of me did. I wanted every woman he lied to, every friend who thought I was the problem, every coworker who admired him, to know exactly who he was. But another part of me felt exhausted. Tired. Broken in ways revenge couldn't fully fix. Diane seemed to notice. "You don't have to destroy yourself trying to destroy him." That sentence stayed with me. Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being about winning. I just wanted my life back. Still, karma arrived faster than expected. 2 nights later, Jason came home furious. Not annoyed. Furious. He slammed the apartment door so hard it shook the walls. "What happened?" I asked carefully. He paced the living room aggressively. "That psycho Claire is spreading lies about me." I stayed completely silent. Inside, my heartbeat exploded. Jason rubbed his face angrily. "She contacted someone from my office." Oh. This was getting serious. Apparently, one of the women Jason lied to worked for a client connected to his company. And now rumors were spreading. I almost smiled. Almost. Jason kept ranting. "She's obsessed with me. Women always get emotional after breakups." Breakups. Interesting word choice for a man secretly engaged to her. Then suddenly, he stopped pacing. And looked directly at me. Really looked at me. The room went quiet. "You haven't talked to her, have you?" There it was. Suspicion. Finally. For one dangerous second, I thought he knew everything. But I stayed calm. "Why would I talk to your ex?" His jaw tightened slightly. Too slightly for most people to notice. But after years with him, I noticed everything. Then he walked closer slowly. "You tell me if something was going on, right?" The manipulation in that sentence almost impressed me. Not. "Are you okay?" Not. "Can we talk?" Just another attempt to maintain control. I smiled softly. "Of course." Lie. Jason studied my face for another long second. Then finally nodded. But I could tell. For the first time since this started. He was scared. And honestly, he should have been. Because the next morning, he was served divorce papers at work. In front of everyone. To be continued. Welcome back to Velvet Confessions. I'll never forget the phone call. Jason called me exactly 14 minutes after he got served. 14. I remember because I stared at the clock while the phone vibrated across the kitchen counter. Over. And over. And over again. I let it ring 5 times before answering. His voice exploded immediately. What the hell is this? Calm. Stay calm. That's what Diane told me. Because angry people reveal themselves when you stay quiet. So I simply asked. What are you talking about? The divorce papers, Emily. There was panic underneath his anger now. Real panic. And honestly, hearing it felt strangely satisfying. I leaned against the counter quietly. You seemed unhappy, I said softly. I thought I was replaceable. Silence. Then breathing. Heavy breathing. You're seriously doing this right now? Doing this. Interesting. As if I was the one who cheated. Lied. Manipulated. Stole money. Jason lowered his voice suddenly. That fake calm tone manipulative people use when rage stops working. We can talk about this at home. No, I replied instantly. We can talk through lawyers. That sentence shattered him. I could hear it. For years, Jason controlled every conversation in our marriage. But now, he couldn't control this one. His voice hardened again. You're making a huge mistake. There it was. The threat beneath the words. I stayed quiet. Then calmly replied. I finally agree with you about something. What? Our marriage was fake. And then. I hung up. My hands trembled afterward. Not because I regretted it. Because it was finally real. There was no going back anymore. That evening, Jason came home earlier than usual. The second he walked inside, I felt the energy shift instantly. Cold. Sharp. Dangerous. He removed his jacket slowly without taking his eyes off me. You embarrassed me at work. I almost laughed. Not. You hurt me. Not. Why are we here? Just embarrassment. That told me everything. Jason cared more about appearances than people. I sat calmly on the couch while he paced the apartment. You're seriously throwing away 5 years over some misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. Right. Because apparently multiple affairs and hidden bank accounts were just communication issues. Then he stopped pacing. And finally asked the question I'd been waiting for. How much do you know? I looked at him quietly. All of it. For the first time since I met him. Jason looked genuinely shaken. Not angry. Not manipulative. Afraid. And honestly, that moment healed something inside me. Because for years, I felt powerless around him. Small. Weak. Replaceable. But now, he was the one losing control. Jason sat down slowly across from me. You went through my things. The audacity almost impressed me. You cheated on me. That's not the point. I actually laughed this time. A real laugh. And the expression on his face changed immediately. Because manipulative people hate one thing most. When you stop taking them seriously. Then Jason tried one final tactic. Emotion. He looked down quietly and whispered. I was going to end it. Lie. I just got confused. Lie. I never stopped loving you. Biggest lie of all. And suddenly I realized something important. Jason didn't even know what love was. To him, people were tools. Attention sources. Safety nets. Ego boosts. That's why he kept replacing women. Because no person could ever fill whatever emptiness existed inside him. I stood up slowly. And for the first time in years, I felt completely calm. You know what the saddest part is? I asked quietly. Jason looked up. I actually believed you ruined my confidence. The room went silent. Then I smiled faintly. But it turns out, you were never powerful enough to destroy me. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Jason had absolutely nothing to say. To be continued.
Tonight's confession continues on Velvet Confessions. After that conversation, Jason stopped pretending. No more fake apologies. No more flowers. No more pretending he wanted to save the marriage. And honestly, that made everything easier. The apartment became emotionally silent. Two strangers living in the ruins of a relationship. Some nights he wouldn't come home at all. Other nights he'd sit across from me in complete silence, staring at his phone while tension filled the room like smoke. But the strange part? I wasn't afraid anymore. I think fear disappears the moment you finally accept the truth. And the truth was simple. Jason never loved me. He loved controlling me. A week later, Diane called with an update. Apparently, Jason's company had launched an internal investigation after rumors about his affairs and financial behavior started spreading. One of the women he lied to had screenshots. Another had emails. And Claire had everything. I sat in Diane's office trying not to smile too hard while she explained it. He's panicking, she said calmly. How bad? Diane raised an eyebrow slightly. Bad enough that his lawyer contacted us asking for a private settlement. Oh. Now he wanted privacy. Interesting. Because humiliating me publicly never seemed to bother him. Diane slid another paper toward me. He's offering you the apartment, half the savings, and a financial payout if you agree not to pursue further legal action. I stared at the offer quietly. Months ago, this amount of money would have sounded life-changing. Now, it just felt empty. Because no amount of money gives you back lost years. Still, accepting the settlement meant freedom. Fast freedom. And honestly, I wanted out. But before signing anything, there was one thing left I needed to do. Closure. That night, I returned to the apartment earlier than usual. Jason was sitting alone at the kitchen counter drinking whiskey in the dark. For the first time in years. He looked exhausted. Older somehow. He glanced up when I entered. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Then quietly, he asked. Did you ever love me? The question caught me off guard. Not because of the words. Because of the timing. After everything. Now he wanted honesty. I looked at him carefully. And strangely, I didn't hate him anymore. Hate requires emotion. Jason just felt sad to me now. Like a man who spent so long manipulating people that he forgot how to genuinely connect with anyone. Yes, I answered softly. I loved you very much. He looked down immediately. And for the first time ever, I think he felt ashamed. Real shame. Not fear. Not embarrassment. Shame. Then quietly, almost brokenly, he asked. When did you stop? The room felt painfully still. I thought about all the possible answers. The cheating. The lies. The insults. But the truth was much simpler. I whispered. I stopped loving you the day you convinced me I was hard to love. Jason closed his eyes. And suddenly, he looked completely defeated. Not because he lost the marriage. Because he finally understood what he destroyed. A long silence passed between us. Then I placed the settlement papers on the counter beside him. I'm signing tomorrow. He nodded slowly without looking up. No argument. No manipulation. Nothing left to say. As I turned toward the bedroom, Jason spoke one final time. Softly. Almost too quietly to hear. You weren't replaceable. My chest tightened painfully. Because those were the words I wanted for years. And somehow, he said them far too late. To be continued.
Welcome back to Velvet Confessions. The day I signed the divorce papers. It rained. Not dramatic movie rain. Just soft, steady rain tapping against the windows of Diane's office while I wrote my name for the final time. Emily Carter. Not Emily Walker anymore. And honestly, that felt strange. 5 years of marriage reduced to ink on paper. Diane collected the documents carefully. Then smiled gently. It's over. Over. Such a simple word for something that once controlled my entire life. I expected to feel victorious. Free. Maybe even happy. But mostly, I just felt tired. Healing doesn't happen the moment pain ends. Sometimes your body leaves survival mode long after your heart does. When I returned to the apartment later that evening, Jason was already packing. Seeing his clothes folded into boxes felt surreal. Like watching evidence disappear. Neither of us spoke much. What was left to say? Eventually, Jason carried the final box toward the front door. Then he stopped. Turned toward me slowly. You know, he said quietly, everyone thinks I'm the villain. I almost laughed. Thanks. Jason rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. I know I hurt you. That sentence alone shocked me more than anything else. Not because it fixed anything. It didn't. But because it was the first honest thing he'd said in years. Then he looked around the apartment silently. I don't think I realized what I had until it was gone. There it was. Regret. The one thing he spent years making me feel. And strangely, I didn't enjoy it. Because seeing someone finally understand the damage they caused isn't satisfying. It's just sad. I crossed my arms quietly. You didn't lose me all at once, Jason. He looked up slowly. You lost me piece by piece. The room went silent again. Then finally, he nodded. Like deep down, he knew I was right. Jason picked up the last box. Walked toward the door. And paused one final time. I really did love you, he said softly. Maybe he believed that. Maybe part of him truly did. But love without respect becomes destruction eventually. And I was too exhausted to explain that anymore. So instead, I simply replied. I hope someday you learn how to love people without hurting them. Then he left. Just like that. No screaming. No dramatic ending. Just the sound of a closing door. And silence. Real silence. I stood alone in the apartment for several minutes staring at nothing. And for the first time in years, I felt peaceful. Not because my life was perfect. Not because I magically healed overnight. But because I no longer woke up beside someone who made me question my worth. That night, I ordered takeout. Sat on the floor in sweatpants. And watched terrible reality television until midnight. And honestly, it was the happiest I'd felt in a very long time. A few weeks later, Claire texted me. Apparently Jason lost multiple clients after the investigation. Several women exposed him publicly online. And according to mutual friends, he was going through a rough time. I stared at the message for a moment. Then locked my phone. Because finally, his chaos was no longer my responsibility. 6 months later, I moved into a smaller apartment across the city. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. One evening while unpacking books, I accidentally found the old red dress I wore the night Jason called me replaceable. For a second, I just stared at it. Then slowly, I smiled. Because that woman feels like a stranger to me now. The woman who begged silently for crumbs of love. The woman who thought being chosen mattered more than being respected. She's gone. And honestly, good. Sometimes losing someone isn't the tragedy. Sometimes losing yourself is. And the real happy ending is finding yourself again after believing you were broken. Thank you for listening to tonight's confession on Velvet Confessions.